India has complained since the 1990s. India has constantly accused Pakistan of fomenting trouble in Kashmir. And many organizations based in Pakistan have probably done that. And so that's part of, that's part, it's not that whether I admit it or not. The fact is that Mumbai was done by an organization that was based in Pakistan. And by the way, regardless of what the Pakistani official position is, my newspaper was amongst the first to visit the village of Kasab and interview his mother and father and report on how he had been recruited. So, I mean, the Pakistani media is aware of all these things.
Many in your country, I gather even ministers in your government, have alleged that what happened in Pahalgam on Tuesday was a false flag operation, something that India had contrived to do for whatever reason against itself. Do you personally, and I'm asking you personally, as an editor, as a former caretaker chief minister of Punjab, believe that this is a false flag operation, or do you think your politicians are out of line in suggesting it could be?
Though I personally think that the Indian deep state is involved. I'm absolutely clear in my mind about that. Now, whether it was a direct false flag operation, meaning it was planned from beginning to end, or whether some obscure group was instigated and lured into doing something like this. There are too many unanswered questions about the security forces, the intelligence failure, and other eyewitness accounts about what happened. The Indian media, in our opinion, is not asking hard questions of the Prime Minister and of the ruling party. And so, therefore, in our minds, it seems that there are many more reasons for the Indian state or the Indian deep state to do something like this, especially at a time when the American Vice President is in India, in order to curry favor with him and to perhaps advance some strategic goals in this region.
So you're saying to me, you simply do not believe that the resistance front is responsible, even though the resistance front claimed responsibility initially. And you're also saying to me that the electronic signatures that India alleges it has, which are traced directly to two separate locations in Pakistan, again, you don't believe that, you don't accept that. So the evidence that's available, you're rejecting.
No, I'm asking for the evidence. Your word is not good enough for me. It's not your word, it's the word of the Indian government.
Lashkar-e-Taiba doesn't exist in Pakistan anymore. It's extinct. But its headquarters in Muridke are there for the world to see. It's barely 20 miles from where you're sitting in Lahore. Secondly, its leaders like Hafiz Saeed, Zaki-ur-Rahman Lakwi, Abdul Rahman Makki, Sajid Mir are in your government's protective custody. And let me add, protective custody is a euphemism for the kind and generous way they're being treated. So who is he fooling? When your defense minister says Lashkar-e-Taiba doesn't exist, of course it exists. You know it exists.
Since you constantly interrupt me, I think I'm going to interrupt you now also. Because this looks like an inquisition to me. So I think I better change my approach, if you'll allow. I think, the fact that these organizations continue to exist doesn't mean they continue to function. You can't just wipe out an organization, even if you ban them. A lot of these organizations are banned by international law. That doesn't mean that they cease to exist. No, they crop up under different names. But the more important thing is that they are not able to carry on their nefarious activities, their acts of terrorism or freedom fighters, as they call them, whatever. That has stopped. That was the point I was trying to make. Pakistan is no longer, let me finish. Pakistan is no longer, in my view, and I am convinced of this, Pakistan is no longer exporting freedom fighters. Pakistan has come to terms with the fact, like it did during General Musharraf's era, that the Kashmir problem is insoluble right now, and therefore we need more time. In the meanwhile, let's normalize relations and so on and so forth. Yes, it's true that there are always, let me finish, that there are always naysayers, and this is an ongoing process. But I think the way the Indian government has reacted to this incident makes me very suspicious about what its intentions are and how it means to go about it.
To the people of Pakistan, the ordinary man on the streets of Lahore or Islamabad or Rawalpindi, do they accept ये तो सिर्फ कहने की बात है, ये कर नहीं पाएंगे 5-10 सालों के पहले. Do they accept that?
I think now that this opens up a larger issue, and I think it's time for me to address that issue. I think you may be interested to know that the reaction in Pakistan to this entire development is not hysterical at all. It's not warmongering on our side. In fact, if you ask your people to look at the memes that are coming from the Pakistani side on social media, you'll realize that Pakistani public is not taking this too seriously. Even as the government of the country is taking it seriously, the Pakistani public is not taking it too seriously. Why? First of all, they are quite surprised and stunned, I think, at the swiftness of the Indian media's response, pointing the finger at Pakistan. And in all the Indian media studios look like war rooms. That's not the case in Pakistan. This is not a topic for discussion that war is imminent and what are we going to do and are they going to cut off our water or not. There is debate about what can India do. And you know what the answer is? We don't know what India can do, but whatever India does, we know we have a response to it. And I think that goes back to the earlier two situations in which India allegedly carried out some actions, which the Indian public thinks were hugely successful. The Pakistani public thinks they were a failure, and so on. So, there's enormous confidence in the armed forces of Pakistan to give a befitting response in the event that there is an escalation or there is an attempt to create a new military front.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.
Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Today we present one of Pakistan's most highly regarded editors and the country's former caretaker chief minister of Punjab, speaking about last week's terror attack in Pahalgam and the India-Pakistan clash it's provoked. How do Pakistanis view the slaughter in Pahalgam? Do they accept it's the work of Pakistani terrorist organizations? How do they respond to the steps India has taken? How do they view their own government's retaliation? And if it comes to military action, how do they regard that prospect? Joining me live from Lahore is the founding editor of the Friday Times and the former caretaker chief minister of Pakistan's Punjab Province, Najam Sethi. Mr. Sethi, let's start with the obvious question. How do you view the terror attack in Pahalgam last Tuesday, which killed 26 innocent civilians, and responsibility for which has been claimed by the Resistance Front, an offshoot of Lashkar-e-Taiba, which the United States, the United Kingdom, and the United Nations consider a terrorist organization?
Thank you, Karan, for giving me an opportunity to talk to you on a very important and precipitous issue. To answer your question straight away, there is no Pakistani who's thinking that Pakistan had a hand in this. And the reason for that is simple. Pakistan's establishment and political structure is already under a considerable strain on many fronts, not least the export of terrorism from across Afghanistan into Pakistan, both from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan and from the Baloch Liberation Army. And the perception here that is grounded in certain realities is that both these organizations are aided and abetted by the Indian deep state. That is a perception that is common in this country. Uh, and so, therefore, on the basis of that, no one thinks that Pakistan's establishment would have been foolish enough to do something like this.
But
And
the
there are other
resistance
reasons for this.
front has claimed it, Mr. Sethi. They put out a tweet immediately claiming it. I know 3 days later they've tried to back off, but that is clearly under pressure, presumably from your government. And the excuse they gave for their original admission is that it was a cyber intrusion. That doesn't even make sense. And secondly, the Indian government has let it be known that they have captured the electronic signature of the resistance front and traced it to at least 2 locations in Pakistan, one in your Punjab, the other, I believe, in your Sindh. So there is evidence that is being shared by India with all the major countries of the world.
Well, we haven't seen that evidence. In fact, what we have heard at our end is that there was no such organization existing before this particular incident. And this is more or less in the same vein as in 1995.
Mr. Sethi, are you there?
There was an incident in which we discovered, or we were told, that there's a new organization presented not in India or not to the Indian media, but to the international community and to Pakistan. That has not happened. That has not
So
happened.
you're saying to me
I think,
that Pakistani public opinion
I think we need
firmly to accept.
Yes, I was saying that if there is any evidence, then that has to be presented, not to the Indian media, but to Pakistan and to the international community. And I think that is not the case currently. So regardless of what you say, there is no credibility in this so-called evidence.
There is a view in India that the speech your Army Chief General Asim Munir gave to the Overseas Pakistani Convention last week, where he referred to Kashmir as Pakistan's jugular vein, adding, and I'm quoting him, "We will not forget it and we will not leave our Kashmiri brethren alone in their heroic struggle." And then he also spoke at length about how Muslims and Hindus are different in almost every possible aspect of life. The view in India is that this was an indication to terrorists to do something, and they deliberately chose Vice President Vance's visit to India as the opportunity to act. How do you, as a leading editor, how do you, as a former caretaker chief minister, respond to this very firm impression in India?
Well, I'm afraid it's wrong. Our perception is that the army chief was responding to a terrible, horrific, horrendous attack in Balochistan on a train carrying servicemen's families. And that was carried out by the BLA. And at that time and previously, the BLA has never shied away from accepting the fact that it is taking assistance from India and other foreign countries. So there was a lot of uproar in Pakistan about that. But the interesting thing is that at no stage did the Pakistani government or establishment point a finger at India directly. It did say foreign hands were involved, but that it's always said when things like this happen. And more often than not, that is correct. But he did not raise the stakes. But the fact was that there was some discussion here that there should be some retaliatory action. But I think the message from our establishment was that no such thing is contemplated, and nor should we even think of it. We should carry on doing the best we can, as it were.
Can I
So
interrupt?
that is why I think he
Let
did that.
me to interrupt, Mr. Sethi, and quote to you what General Asim Munir said. He said, "Our forefathers believed that we were different from Hindus in every possible aspect of life. Our religion is different, our customs are different, our traditions are different, our thoughts are different, our ambitions are different." Frankly, that is untrue. Our thoughts are often the same. We swear in the two jobs with the same bad language. We eat the same food. We have the same rishtedaris. Our ambitions are the same. We all want to escape poverty. Your army chief was clearly expressing sentiments that we believe in India were designed to instigate terror against us.
On the contrary, the perception in Pakistan is that since the BJP government has come to power in India, the Hindutva card has been played or overplayed and overplayed, and that the Muslims and other minorities are under direct threat. And so, therefore, it's not correct to say that this is something the Pakistani chief is saying. This is something the Indian Prime Minister has said, and the BJP constantly talks about the Hindu civilization and the Hinduization of India. And so, therefore, I don't think this is something new. We've heard this sort of language from across the border for a long time. And frankly, it doesn't really, wash with us.
Let me ask you a personal question before I move to another issue. Many in your country, I gather even ministers in your government, have alleged that what happened in Pahalgam on Tuesday was a false flag operation, something that India had contrived to do for whatever reason against itself. Do you personally, and I'm asking you personally, as an editor, as a former caretaker chief minister of Punjab, believe that this is a false flag operation, or do you think your politicians are out of line in suggesting it could be?
Though I personally think that the Indian deep state is involved. I'm absolutely clear in my mind about that. Now, whether it was a direct false flag operation, meaning it was planned from beginning to end, or whether some obscure group was instigated and lured into doing something like this. There are too many unanswered questions about the security forces, the intelligence failure, and other eyewitness accounts about what happened. The Indian media, in our opinion, is not asking hard questions of the Prime Minister and of the ruling party. And so, therefore, in our minds, it seems that there are many more reasons for the Indian state or the Indian deep state to do something like this, especially at a time when the American vice president is in India, in order to curry favor with him and to perhaps advance some strategic goals in this region.
So you're saying to me, you simply do not believe that the resistance front is responsible, even though the resistance front claimed responsibility initially. And you're also saying to me that the electronic signatures that India alleges it has, which are traced directly to two separate locations in Pakistan, again, you don't believe that, you don't accept that. So the evidence that's available, you're rejecting.
No, I'm asking for the evidence. Your word is not good enough for me. It's not your word, it's the word of the Indian government. Let's see the evidence. Let's have a neutral expert look at the evidence. The Pakistan government has now responded in a very responsible manner, I think. It has said that let's bring the Americans and the others into this and let them carry out an independent investigation. I think that's a very fair response. If there is such evidence.
Give me named the Americans, but your Prime Minister spoke about what he called a transparent, neutral, professional investigation. The problem is that in the past, particularly after the Mumbai attacks, which were done by the LET, and we know that's undeniable, India shared dossiers with your government which were ignored. I know that after Pathankot, India invited an investigation team from Pakistan to come, and it did come. It came to India, it visited the camp in Pathankot, but it did not permit Indians to go to Pakistan to share evidence and to share investigative details with them. So the Indian position is that A, if you call it a false flag operation, and B, if in the past you don't cooperate when we've been willing to share details with you, why should we trust you this time around? That's not my opinion. That's the Indian government's response that I'm putting to you.
Well, the response over here is this: if you have nothing to hide, then you should be actually actively seeking an international investigation, which, if it can prove that Pakistan or Pakistan's establishment was behind it, that would be a severe condemnation from which Pakistan won't be able to escape. I think this is a great opportunity for the Indian establishment to bring in international community directly into this investigation and ask them to find out whether this is true or not. I'm sure the international community has ears and eyes over this region, and I'm sure they can bring some good value to such an investigation. You see, the argument here at our end is that we have, if India doesn't want a neutral investigation, then that means India has something to hide. If we want a neutral investigation, that means we have nothing to hide. You don't even have to bring the Pakistanis into it. You should just ask the international community. You should just ask the international community to come in and find out what happened. I don't think there's a bilateral issue anymore.
The reason India is balking at the Prime Minister's offer of a neutral investigation is that whenever it was done in the past, it didn't yield any results because your government refused to cooperate. And the second reason India is balking is because your government has already called this a false flag operation. You've already announced to the world what you believe is the outcome. Why then ask
Yeah.
for a neutral investigation when you've come up with the decision in advance?
Because your government is saying it's not a false flag operation. Your government is pointing the finger at Pakistan. So I think because it's a tit for tat, you're saying that it's Pakistan behind it. We are saying that your deep state is possibly behind it. So what's the problem? Call the
Okay.
international community, ask them to look into it, get the United Nations, keep Pakistan out of the direct let them do the investigation. And if that investigation points the finger at Pakistan, you will have achieved your objective. Pakistan will be immediately isolated and condemned. Right now,
Let me
no
just
country in the
clarify.
world, no, let me finish. Right now, no country in the world is prepared to answer India's call to condemn Pakistan. They're
Let
all
me
condemning,
clarify what
they're
you're
all
saying,
condemning
because-
terrorism, but nobody is condemning Pakistan because they haven't seen any evidence of it.
Let me clarify what you're saying, because what you're saying, prima facie, Mr. Sethi, is not what your government has said. You're going further than them, and I want to ask you whether your government endorses the extra steps you've taken. You've said, keep Pakistan out of the investigation, share the evidence and the details entirely with Western countries that are neutral and objective, let them come to a conclusion. If
No,
they
but
decide that Pakistan is involved, Pakistan will be isolated as never before. That's
the
what you
thing
said.
is that the thing is, regardless of what I say, any investigation as far as this issue is concerned, whether by India or by the international community, will have to bring in Pakistan. Pakistan doesn't have to say bring us in, but they will automatically ask for Pakistan to answer some questions. And if Pakistan refuses to answer those questions, then you'll have solved your problem, won't you have?
Okay.
So I think let's not
Let-
get into these little
Absolutely.
diversions.
Let's
Let's
come
focus
to
on
a-
the main issues. If India is clear that Pakistan is behind it, call an international investigation into it. I think that's a fair request.
Let's come to a second big issue I want to take up with you in this interview today. Last week, in an interview to Yalda Hakim of Sky News, your defense minister, Khwaja Asif, admitted that for decades Pakistan was supporting, funding, and training terrorist organizations on behalf of the United States. In which case, why is your government unwilling to accept that is precisely the relationship Pakistan has with the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Jaish-e-Mohammed, who target India? It's the same relationship, except not vis-a-vis America, this time vis-a-vis India.
I think the defense minister of Pakistan was referring to the Mujahideen, who were trained and armed by the United States and unleashed in Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. That is what he was referring to. I don't think you should misunderstand the import of what he was saying. But let's go a little further. India has complained since the 1990s. India has constantly accused Pakistan of fomenting trouble in Kashmir. And many organizations based in Pakistan have probably done that. And
You
so
admit
that's
that.
part of,
You admit
that's
that.
part, it's not that whether I admit it or not. The fact is that Mumbai was done by an organization that was based in Pakistan. And by the way, regardless of what the Pakistani official position is, my newspaper was amongst the first to visit the village of Kasab and interview his mother and father and report on how he had been recruited. So, I mean, the Pakistani media is aware of all these things.
Absolutely. And can I add, Mr.
So
Sethi-
let me now finish. Let me finish.
Let me just add one thing. The
No.
reason I'm keen to talk to you today is because it was your paper, the Friday Times, that actually exposed details of Ajmal Kasab's background at a time when your government was not prepared to accept it. But let me add, because this is important, Tariq Khosa, who is Director General of the Federal Investigative Agency in your country, writing an article in Dawn newspaper in 2015.
So going forward, I think
Actually said that the LET attack on Mumbai had been, and I'm quoting him, planned and launched from Pakistan. He went into other extensive details. Oh dear, once again, that line to Pakistan has gone. Hopefully, Mr. Sethi will be back very soon. This has happened a couple of times before. It's to do with, I believe,
I'm sorry about this. So there is
Can I finish? And I'll
So
carry
as I
on.
was saying,
I can give you further details that corroborate what you're saying. Tariq Khoza, your former Director General of
that's
the
okay.
Federal
Look,
Investigative
that's not in dispute. That's not in dispute. So let's not talk about things that are not in dispute. So going forward, what has happened is that since 2004, the Baloch liberation movement has gathered momentum. And the problem here is that your national security advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval, is in public record.
Can you
Essentially,
repeat what you said? We lost
is
your
no longer
connection.
going to be India's doctrine against Pakistan is not going to be defensive, it's going to be offensive defensive. And he says explicitly that we will teach you a lesson in Balochistan. So you see now, what has happened is that since 2004, the Indian deep state's hand in supporting secessionist movements in Pakistan has increased and is palpable. So now, in a sense, if one goes by what you said about Pakistan's involvement in Kashmir earlier, now the boot is on the other foot. That is my view. I'm not talking about the government of Pakistan. I'm not here to give you their point of view. So the thing is that there's no doubt now that India's offensive defensive doctrine has caused a lot of problems for Pakistan. As I speak, yesterday there was another outburst, ambush. Uh, over 2,500 Pakistani soldiers have been killed in these border incidents. The terrorism that is coming to us from across Afghanistan, which is aided and abetted by the Indian deep state.
On
So
what
now the
basis,
boot is on the other side.
Can I interrupt and ask, on what basis do you and your government glibly assert that the terror you face from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or directly from Afghanistan is aided and abetted by India? On what basis do you assert that what
Right.
happened to the Jammu Express aided and abetted by India?
Right.
These are clearly attempts to try and deflect attention, to accuse India falsely, and to deny to your own people that the responsibility lies at home, perhaps with an army that has become so unpopular, it's being publicly attacked in its own country for failing to protect Pakistanis.
No, that's not correct. If you recall, in 2010 or 11, I think it was, when the Pakistani Prime Minister and the then Indian Prime Minister met in Egypt at a place called Sharm el-Sheikh. And the joint communique that came out of that mentioned two issues, or one major issue: terrorism from India-sponsored terrorism in Balochistan and Pakistan-sponsored quote-unquote terrorism in Kashmir. That was part of the joint communique. It's another, so that means at that stage, India accepted the fact that there was a bilateral problem, just as Pakistan accepted the fact that there was a bilateral problem. But subsequently, when the Indian Prime Minister came home, there was a lot of criticism about why did you allow Balochistan to come into the communique. So the Balochistan problem is old. It's not a question of presenting the evidence.
Okay.
I think it would be a very good idea, frankly, if we were to enlarge the scope of this investigation. Maybe you can have a United Nations agency investigating the acts of terrorism in Pakistan and the acts of terrorism in India. And let's get to the truth once and for all about where this game is taking both countries.
I'll tell you the problem with that idea. And once again, I'm going back to Khwaja Asif's interview to Sky News to Yalda Hakim. He said, and I'm quoting him, Lashkar-e-Taiba doesn't exist in Pakistan anymore. It's extinct. But its headquarters in Muridke are there for the world to see. It's barely 20 miles from where you're sitting in Lahore. Secondly, its leaders like Hafiz Saeed, Zaki-ur-Rahman Lakwi, Abdul Rahman Makki, Sajid Mir are in your government's protective custody. And let me add, protective custody is a euphemism for the kind and generous way they are being treated. So who is he fooling? When your defense minister says Lashkar-e-Taiba doesn't exist, of course it exists. You know it exists.
There is a very interesting development that has taken place in the last 3 or 4 years. Your deep state, in my view, your deep state has succeeded in assassinating some top jihadi leaders in Pakistan. I'm saying this, okay? And that is one of the reasons also why the Lashkar-e-Taiba is quote-unquote non-existent or gone underground or become defunct.
Are you there?
We say.
Are you there, Mr. Sethi?
There is another reason for that. And I take you back to 2000. I take you back to the very important speech at that time, in which he said that the time for, the time, I'm talking. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but not
You're
very
frozen.
clearly. Would you want to start that answer
Yeah,
again?
you're okay now. So I was talking about Can
No,
you?
we've lost you, Mr. Sethi.
Yeah, I'm saying that in 2019 or 20, I think it was, that the then army chief, General Qamar Javed Bajwa, gave a very important speech in which he said that Pakistan's focus henceforth would be on geoeconomics and not on geostrategy, and that enough of these neighborhood quarrels and stuff like that, and let's focus on our economy. Since then, all the jihadi organizations, quote unquote, were wound up, and the so-called Kashmir Jihad the tap was closed.
Forgive me.
It is my information and my view.
No, forgive me, Mr. Sethi. I must interrupt you with reluctance, but in fact, all that happened after General Bajwa's speech is that the Lashkar-e-Toiba changed its name. It now functions as the Pakistan Markazi Muslim League, or it functions as the Jammu Kashmir United Movement. And let me quote to you what Dawn, one of the most reputed papers in your country, has said about this. I'm quoting Dawn. As has been witnessed for nearly 2 decades now, the state moves to ban militant outfits, but in little time they are back up and running with new names and the entire structure of violence intact. That's Dawn saying that these cosmetic makeovers by which you claim that LED is extinct, it doesn't exist, is actually a farce.
I did not
under another name. Dawn is exposing that.
I did not say, Karan. Since you constantly interrupt me, I think I'm going to interrupt you now also. Because this looks like an inquisition to me. So I think I better change my approach, if you'll allow. I think, the fact that these organizations continue to exist doesn't mean they continue to function. You can't just wipe out an organization, even if you ban them. A lot of these organizations are banned by international law. That does mean that they cease to exist? No, they crop up under different names. But the more important thing is that they are not able to carry on their nefarious activities, their acts of terrorism or freedom fighters, as they call them, whatever. That has stopped. That was the point I was trying to make. Pakistan is no longer, let me finish. Pakistan is no longer, in my view, and I am convinced of this, Pakistan is no longer exporting freedom fighters. Pakistan has come to terms with the fact, like it did during General Musharraf's era, that the Kashmir problem is insoluble right now, and therefore we need more time. In the meanwhile, let's normalize relations and so on and so forth. Yes, it's true that there are always, let me finish, that there are always naysayers, and this is an ongoing process. But I think the way the Indian government has reacted to this incident makes me very suspicious about what its intentions are and how it means to go about it. Considering Mr. Doval is very much in charge and has his own strategy is pretty clear to me. You see, the argument is that Pakistan is at a weak moment because its economy is in trouble and so on and so forth. And so therefore, this may be a good time to stick the knife in. And what is happening across our borders is evidence of that. The only way you can get to the truth in these matters is not by leveling allegations and accusations against each other. The tit for tat, you did this, we did this. This happened in the past, this is happening now. Bring in the international community. Why is India afraid of bringing in the international community? If India is in the right, let the international community point the finger directly at Pakistan, and then we'll take it from there. But, when you deny this, and you carry on saying that we have evidence. Well, we say we have evidence. Now the defense minister of Pakistan is saying we have evidence and we are showing it to the Brits and we are showing it to the Americans and we are showing it to this and we are showing it to that. Don't you think we should move on from this subject of tit for tat and you did this and we did this? Let's get on with where we are right now and where we are likely to go.
I very much want to move on because I want to talk to you now about the steps that the two countries have taken in response and in retaliation. But before I do so, I should, in fairness, point one thing out. You claim that organizations can change their names, their activities stop, but the organizations may still continue. The problem is that in the shape of the resistance fronts, the LET is still continuing terror. And the resistance front has not just come into creation. It's been around since at least 2019 to 20. It's been around for 4 or 5 years. It's been carrying out activities and admitting to them.
No, that's
And
not.
it admitted to this until your government put pressure on it to backtrack and to come up with this silly excuse that cyber intrusion was responsible for the admission
Look,
they
people
made.
make statements. There are a lot of people. No. This is what your government is saying. Sorry, I'm not in a position to take their word for it. That there's this group and they're doing this and we have this evidence. I don't buy it. So, present it in the right, proper platform with the right evidence, and then we'll talk about it. So just don't.
Let's then move to the steps the two countries have taken in response and retaliation against each other. I'll start with what India's done. I'll come after that to what Pakistan has done. The Indian government has taken a series of steps, but the most significant is placing the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. Given that the Indus Waters account for something like 80% of Pakistan's agriculture, and I'm told 25% of your GDP, how do the people of Pakistan, how do journalists like yourself view this response from India?
We think that it is both legally and morally reprehensible. Nowhere in history do we find instances in which something like this has been threatened. We know of conflicts between upper and lower riparians, but to threaten to cut off water supplies or to flood a country, that's never happened. And it's not likely to happen. I can go ahead and argue that case too. And for India to say this, and for the Indian public to actually howl and say, yes, go ahead and do it, is ridiculous, frankly, and morally reprehensible. I don't think this is a serious threat, personally. But you see, the thing is that people do have to take threats seriously, especially establishments that are prickly. There's nothing India can do in the short term to carry out its threat. The long term, well, in the long term, we're all dead, as Keynes used to say. So therefore, I don't think that in the short term there is a threat to Pakistan. And all the experts have said as much. Even a gentleman on Raghavan Saab on your show said it the other day, that for India to take any concrete measures to deprive Pakistan of its rightful share of water will take maybe 5-10 years and so on. And therefore, if India sets this precedent, there's nothing to stop China from following the same route and hurting India. And let me now bring China into it before we get on to our other discussion. This is not only about India and Pakistan anymore. In my view, this is also about India, Pakistan, and China. China has a huge stake in Pakistan now, which has grown over the years. CPEC is a central pillar of its Road and Belt Initiative. And so therefore, the recent statement by the Chinese and the recent offer of military assistance by the Chinese to Pakistan should give an indication of the strength of these ties and how China may react if in the event that there is an escalation in hostilities between India and Pakistan. I don't want to go into details, but if you like, I can.
Let me ask you this. You're very clear, and you quoted Srinath Raghavan, who gave me an interview just 2 days ago, that India cannot establish the reservoirs, the dams, and the storage to cut off all water to Pakistan in less than 5, maybe 10 years. And therefore, this is just a symbolic, maybe a psychological gesture, not a substantive one. But do the people of Pakistan, the ordinary man on the streets of Lahore or Islamabad or Rawalpindi, do they accept? ये तो सिर्फ कहने की बात है, ये कर नहीं पाएंगे 5-10 सालों के पहले. Do they accept that?
I think now that this opens up a larger issue, and I think it's time for me to address that issue. I think you may be interested to know that the reaction in Pakistan to this entire development is not hysterical at all. It's not warmongering on our side. In fact, if you ask your people to look at the memes that are coming from the Pakistani side on social media, you'll realize that Pakistani public is not taking this too seriously, even as the government of the country is taking it seriously. the Pakistani public is not taking it too seriously. Why? First of all, they are quite surprised and stunned, I think, at the swiftness of the Indian media's response, pointing the finger at Pakistan. And in all the Indian media studios look like war rooms. That's not the case in Pakistan. This is not a topic for discussion that war is imminent and what are we going to do? And are they going to cut off our water or not? There is debate about what can India do. And you know what the answer is? We don't know what India can do, but whatever India does, we know we have a response to it. And I think that goes back to the earlier two situations in which India allegedly carried out some actions, which the Indian public thinks were hugely successful. The Pakistani public thinks they were a failure, and so on. So, there's enormous confidence in the armed forces of Pakistan to give a befitting response in the event that there is an escalation or there is an attempt to create a new military front. So Pakistanis are not too pushed about all this. Let me tell you this. And I think until and unless India takes some action and Pakistan's response to it follows, then we have to see whether there is an escalation and whether both countries get on the escalation ladder. And I think that is where the real problems will lie.
I'll come to that in a moment's time. But let me first put to you the most serious step in terms of retaliation that your government has taken. It's threatened. I'm deliberately using that word threatened to hold the Simla agreement in abeyance. I want to ask you two questions. In your eyes, as a Pakistani journalist who understands the significance of the Simla agreement, what does holding it in abeyance mean? What is the significance of that?
I think it's the same significance as holding the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance means. I don't know what it means on either side, frankly. Now, the thing is that what is the LOC? I think this issue was also raised in your interview with Mr. Raghavan, that the LOC is actually a border and any violation of that can create all sorts of international dispute problems. But I think more important, from my point of view, is a legal dimension. If the LOC or the Simla agreement is held in abeyance, that means the old UN resolutions, non-bilateral issues come up to the fore, which means that Simla said that we will discuss these issues bilaterally. And if we now say that, okay, we will not discuss these issues bilaterally, we'll go back to the United Nations, and we start harping about the same plebiscite and all the rest of it. That is like the abeyance of the Indus Water Treaty, which raises the temperature from the Indian side. This is a veiled threat. Okay, in that case, no bilateralism. We'll go back to the United Nations. For whatever it's worth, we will go back and start harping about it.
Can I point out there is one more significant feature of holding this in abeyance? Frankly speaking, it's this. The Simla agreement converted the old ceasefire line into the line of control. And that line of control is now regarded as the de facto, maybe not the de jure, but the de facto border between India and Pakistan. By putting the Simla agreement in abeyance, is your government saying it no longer honors the LOC? Is that what it's also going to suggest?
Just as the Indian government is not saying it doesn't honor the Indus Water Treaty, it's not saying that. It wants to renegotiate it. It wants to talk about it. It wants to threaten that we might be able to do this or we might be able to do that. But we all know that there is a mechanism for all these things. And whether India likes it or not, they have to go through that mechanism. So I don't think you should take this too seriously.
Let me then come to the last issue. In some senses, it's the biggest concern of all. Prime Minister Modi, in the speech that he deliberately delivered part of in English so the world could follow him, has promised to punish every terrorist and their backers, pursue them, as he put it, to the ends of the earth, and threaten them with punishment the likes of which they cannot imagine. Do you view this? Do the people of Pakistan view this as a threat of military action in the days and weeks to come?
Yes, they do. They think, as you just pointed out, that the Indian deep state has gone too far, and the media reaction that has followed probably makes it difficult for the Indian Prime Minister now not to do anything to assuage public opinion. And if that's the case, okay. But that has happened before also. This is not the first time India has expressed outrage. The Indian media has expressed outrage. There's been warmongering on that side. And then India has done a few things and then backed off. because there's been an appropriate response to it. You see, the problem with these two militaries, the establishments on both sides, is that in the short term, in a limited engagement, the Pakistanis are able to give as good as they get. So there's going to be no winners in this. India is not going to be a winner. Your public may think so. Our public may think we are winners, but there are going to be no winners. So, but what is worrying me is that there may be an escalation. The Indians do something, the Pakistanis do something back. The Indians say we claim victory, the Pakistanis claim victory. If it ends there, like it did in 2019, yes, that's good. But will it end there? What if it leads to more escalation because one side claims to have done even better than the other side? And then where do we go from there? That's a very dangerous route to take. And that is why it's very important, I think, for both countries to cool down. That is where I think the proposal for an international commission of inquiry is very relevant. But I have a funny feeling that's not going to happen. I think the Indians are going to retaliate in some way or the other, and I think there's going to be a counter retaliation. Now, where do we go from there? I don't know.
Let me put to you, Mr. Sethi, a viewpoint that is widely held in India. At the moment, the Pakistani army's reputation is at a particularly low ebb in your country, and I know as a journalist you wouldn't deny that. It faces challenges from Afghanistan, as you mentioned yourself a moment ago. It has to confront serious internal terrorism within the borders of the country. And as many people point out, it's supporting an unpopular, some would say even an unelected civilian government, and that's brought the army into disrepute itself. And General Asim Munir is said to be facing challenges internally within the army hierarchy too. As a Pakistani, as a journalist who's very well informed about his own country, how do you view the position your army finds itself in?
I think, what happens is in cases like this, regardless of the popularity or lack of it of any government, whether a hybrid government, a military government, or a political government, when it comes to India, all the differences are put aside. And nationalism takes its normal, raises its head, becomes hyper-nationalism, and all internal disputes are put aside. I think that's likely to happen here. All the internal disputes that you're talking about, the internal weaknesses, they will be put aside. The minute there is an attack by India, this nation will stand united. And that's happened in the past, it's likely to happen again. There will be no divisions on this one, I can tell you this. Even the most anti-army, anti-establishment people will fall in line.
My last question, Mr. Sethi. In the statement that your government put out a couple of days ago, it said it will respond to any attempt to stop or divert the flow of water with full force across the complete spectrum of national power. That's widely taken as a threat to use nuclear weapons. And I want to ask you a simple, blunt question. Is that threat serious, or is this schoolboy bluff?
It's serious. I'll tell you why it's serious. The whole Pakistani nuclear program, the notion of deterrence, is based on this. As a former prime minister once said, we haven't made the bomb to explode it as a festival, during a festival. So here's the problem. The Pakistani nuclear doctrine is based on the following points. Number one, if the Indian army crosses over and seizes a large tract of Pakistani territory, whether in Azad Kashmir or anywhere else, Pakistan will use tactical nuclear weapons on its own soil to decimate that. Number one. Number two, if there is any attempt to blockade Karachi that leads to the strangulation of Pakistan, Pakistan will use nuclear weapons. And third, if there's any attempt to divert the waters or to starve Pakistan, Pakistan will use nuclear weapons. Now, this is the nuclear doctrine. And this doctrine is based on the following understanding, that if Pakistan is not going to exist because of any of these actions by India, then we might as well blow everybody up and go to heaven. So you see, that is the nuclear doctrine here, which is one reason why Pakistan has consistently refused to sign the no first strike agreement. India wants Pakistan to sign the no first strike agreement. The international community has been pressurizing Pakistan to do that. Pakistan's government's political, hybrid, military have all consistently refused to do that. They will not
All right.
sign the no first strike agreement. And that is
That
why
is a
this
very-
threat is a real one.
That is a very clear message. And I imagine a lot of people listening to your interview in India will sit up and say, I don't think Najam Sethi is simply calling our bluff. I thank you for the time you've given me. I thank you for answering all my questions. Many of them I know were deliberately designed to be tough. That is always the case when Indians and Pakistanis talk to each other, particularly as journalists in a situation that we face today. But I thank you for taking those questions and for agreeing to answer them. And I hope that the wiser wisdom that you spoke about comes into play and that both countries can back off and we don't end up with precipitous action that we could live to regret. I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care.
I endorse
Stay safe.
I endorse your sentiment. I endorse your sentiment fully. Let's back off. Let's be civilized. Let's start talking.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.